In the second video, I'd like to describe what these conditions are so that you can begin to develop a practical way of moving into the new age of humanity. So, the human being is not represented by any one of us. The human being exists as a collection of all the primary expressions of what it means to be human.
So, how does humanity find its full expression? Humanity finds its full expression through, if we can think of it as a function, or we'd like to potentially express it as a function. It's one way to think about it. And if we try to express it as a function, it needs to be a function that meets the sufficiency condition and the necessity condition. And it should have no extraneous elements beyond those two conditions. So whatever we put in the function should be strictly what is needed. So what does that look like when we think about humanity? So we experience life as humans in a life cycle. The beginning is birth and the end is death. And in the natural order of events, we experience three primary stages. One of them is the pre-reproductive stage, when we are children. The other one is the reproductive stage, when we are capable of reproduction, not necessarily reproducing, but when we're capable of reproduction. And the last one is the post-reproductive stage, when we are not really capable of reproduction. It begins at menopause. And it's interesting to note, with fairly verifiable facts, with Google searches, for example, that if you look throughout history and if you look across cultures, in well-functioning tribes, and what I mean by a well-functioning tribe is one that is capable of perpetuating itself and its culture through time beyond the one life cycle, that the percentages of the population tend to be fairly similar across cultures and across ages, so that you roughly have 40% of the population in the pre-reproductive age. Roughly 30% tends to be a little greater than 30% in the reproductive age. And then you have 30% of the population in the post-reproductive age. And when you have that spread in your population, in your tribe, you find that there are interdependencies between the three populations that make life more sustainable, so that none of these populations are segregated by function. They're actually interdependent on each other. And one of the problems in the industrial society that we built is that increasingly we came to segregate the three population segments, and we lost the interdependence among the three groups. The interdependence is functional. To give a brief example, in a properly functioning community, the older people are helping to take care of the younger people. And this accomplishes not only care for the kids, but it gives the older population a sense of purpose and living, and it keeps them active. It also frees up the population in the middle to both make babies and to take care economically of the other two population segments. They provide the primary means of muscle strength to grow vegetables, to create art, to produce economic surplus. So this is why it's important to have the three populations cohabiting and cohabiting in interdependence. The second factor, which we will talk about briefly, is the gender factor.
Three components that are defined by nature itself, not by the figments of our imagination. So I know there's a lot about gender identities multiplied and all that stuff. And, I have nothing to be against or for with that multiplication, other than to say, if you just take it as the expression of personal freedom, fantastic, but please don't confuse that for the natural order of things. There is nothing natural about creating numerous gender identities. But what is natural is that there's two biological genders. One of them is male, the other one is female. And it's really not a big stretch to say, to simply state that these are natural because it takes male and female to produce progeny. It's as simple as that. So the perpetuation of the human race is dependent on male and female coming together to procreate. And so these are the two basic genders. The rest of them are created by the mind of people. And so anyway, so what you need to do is you need to organize yourselves in groups, that will feel like a tribe, and you will be very proud of being the member of a tribe, because you are tribal, all of you, all of us, we are tribal. For thousands and thousands of years, we evolved always in the tribe, and the disruption of the tribe is a fairly recent phenomenon. So I can, in a later video, go deeper into that. But what I want to suggest is that you need to find about a group of about 150 to 300 people. That group of people, they need to be organized as follows. You need to make sure that at least 40% of that group of people are children. And by children, I define strictly as, not having reached puberty yet. Okay, so about 40%, they should be that. And they should be divided roughly 50-50, but not exactly. You should favor males slightly, okay? So that composition of children, if you have the ability to choose, you need to make sure that it's roughly about 51 boys and 49% girls, okay? So then after that, hopefully their parents and any add-ons that are necessary will constitute the next 30% of the population, and that 30% of the population, male and female, of the ages between puberty and menopause. And that one should be equal in proportion, 50-50. So half of that 30%, should be males, and the other half should be females. Finally, the last 30%, yes, 40, 30, 30, but it can be lower, slightly lower, of the population needs to be of the post-reproductive age, so post-menopause. That one should slightly favor women, again in a ratio of about 51% women, 49% males. That's what your population should look like. Again, your tribe should be between 150 to 300 people, 40, 30, 30 in percentages of children, people who are capable of reproduction, and lastly, older people, senior citizens. So, and the percentages should be first stage, slightly favor men, in the middle should be equal, in the last third, it should slightly favor women. Now, those are the instructions. Then you need to find land that is large enough to support that population, roughly about 100 hectares to keep it easy. That land should have access to water. So you should be able to dig into the soil unless you have a stream, but even better than a stream, you need to be able to dig into the ground for your wells. So you need to choose land where you can dig wells. Now, the problem with streams is that streams get polluted upstream and downstream. They are a recipe for intertribal trouble. So the best thing you need to do to ensure the security and peace of your people, of your tribe, you need to choose land that has access to the waterbed. And so once you have your land, roughly about 100 hectares, once you have the people that you want to do this with, you can be absolutely connected to the internet for the purposes of information. So I would suggest that you need to have, the first thing you need to build is your common facilities. That's where you eat. So it needs to be a very large space with a table that will fit almost everybody, or tables that can be aggregated to fit everybody for your communal, your communal dinners. This is very important for bonding purposes and to begin to develop your own rituals that will sustain the culture of your tribe and give meaning to your lives. So without ritual, there is no meaning, but ritual can only emerge when you have true community, which is what I'm describing. So you need to build those communal facilities also because that's where the gatherings of the communications that need to happen at intertribal level occur. Okay, so I think I'm just briefly going to, so I think I've given you enough of what your tribe composition should be like. Perhaps we can talk about, the land, what that needs to look like in the next video. Thank you.